Welcome back to another Z Rebels Technical Water Cooler session recording. Now this session was by far one of my favorite sessions that we've ever done. We tackled a huge topic that seems to be swirling around the industry lately, which is the topic of mainframe modernization. We talked about it from the perspective of a technician, as well as from the business, industry, and cultural perspective as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about whether you think the term mainframe modernization is helping or harming the industry, or simply indifferent. So be sure to drop us a comment and let us know what you think. While you're at it, subscribe to the channel and head on over to www.7nines.com to get plugged into everything we have to offer, including the System C Enthusiast Discord, blogs, merch, and other things as well. Check out our previous recording videos by going to the channel here and walking through those and learning what we've discussed in the past. We'd love to hear from you at our next session, so be sure to go to www.discord.gg/SZE and get plugged into the System C Enthusiast Discord. Now, I forgot to mute my hardware microphone here, so throughout this recording you might hear me typing on my keyboard or my water heater kicking on or something like that. So I apologize for the poor audio recording, but I was so engaged in the conversation that I just forgot to do it. So all that in mind, I hope that you enjoy this recording, and I hope that you'll be with us at our next event in June. Thanks for watching. With all that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Frank to kick us off, or add anything I might have forgotten. But for real, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Frank, for bringing this to the table, and hopefully everyone will enjoy this conversation. Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to echo Steve's thanks. This is really not about any particular group of people saying something. This is about what you want to talk about. It's about the things that you care about. And so it'd be great before we start droning on for somebody to bring up any question or comment that they want.
We got a few hands going up. PJ's now a speaker.
Oh, we're going to regret this.
I'm there. Are you here? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I showing up?
Yes.
Yeah,
I got the alert on. I want to talk about IBM Z-Day call for papers. Have you guys talked about that? Obviously, IBM Z-Day is coming up. Tech Exchange coming up. Lots of events. I want to encourage everybody to think about topics, submissions. I think this is a good forum to also find other collaborators for kind of topics that you want to, or work on presentations together. I'm still looking at plugging my video game session, Hell Divers, talk about testing. I haven't gotten much response from non-IBMers. I need a non-IBMer. Otherwise, we're forcing Steven to do it. But yes, if anybody's playing Hell Divers 2, wants to talk shop, hopefully test, I'd love your participation. So, plug for IBM Z-Day.
Hey, PJ, can you put a link to the submission page here?
I will find it and I will post that in the chat. Absolutely.
All right, we have a challenge question today with a sub note that says, my challenge is show even one example of any other IT company that's not IBM, which is the target of marketing messages that say modernization needed. That is a loaded question, I think. I love it. I don't know if we want to tackle that now or do we want to tackle that later? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, no, it's actually David Staudiker. You know how I hate this term, right?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to throw that. I don't want to derail today's discussion about AI, but at some point I wanted to get that question out there because it just hit me in the last week that I think this is the key to the whole reason that I think this whole modernization strategy that even IBM has bought into is a bad idea, because IBM, so far as I know, is the only target of these marketing messages. And it seems just incredible that IBM would bow to that and say, okay, we admit it, we need to modernize, but you'll never get there because what modernization means in IT is just it's anything that's not IBM is what that seems to be the consensus, which is, I think, of course, I don't believe that at all. I think it's completely the opposite. And if we're talking about modernization, it should be people coming to IBM to modernize. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But that's the reason for the challenge question. Anybody, if you can find any marketing page out there, any ad by anybody that says we are modernizing, and this is which is not IBM, or that they're or that some other company is the target of that kind of message, saying you need to modernize by getting off Apple, getting off Oracle, and go somewhere else. I don't think you'll find it. So that's all I've got to say.
Yeah, I don't know if you've looked, but my title in LinkedIn, or actually in the company, is CTO for declunkification. I too refuse to say modernization, because in most for most people that means just move it to the cloud or get off the mainframe. So
it's vague. There's
right.
When it comes right down to it, there's no real specific definition. It's a lot of things to a lot of different people, but mostly the consensus seems to be just get off IBM and you'll be modern. I even saw an ad that says move your everything to Micro Focus. You know what they are? They're like Intel x86 servers, and that's how you modernize. That's crap. Sorry.
Yes. I don't think you're going to find too many people disagreeing with you here.
Okay, but I know some people have embraced it. Even here, I think people say, "Well, why not call it modernization?" I like that. It sounds positive, and except when the only target, it's like having a kid that's that everybody in school says, "Oh, that kid's slow. He needs a tutor." When. Yeah. So anyway, that analogy may not hold up too well. I'm looking for a better one. But anyway, I don't want to derail today's discussion about AI, because I know that's what's on the agenda. But I just wanted to get that out there and see if anybody can find an ad or a marketing message that does not target IBM but says the same thing. I'd love to see it. I don't think you can find it.
I don't think you can either. And I just want to make it clear that there is no agenda here. Steve and I come up with things that we want to talk about so that we don't sit here for an hour with dead air. But it really is about what people want to talk about.
Right. And AI was last week. I think we talked about, right? It was last session. My brain is scrambled eggs. Yeah. So today we really don't have one. So it's fine to talk about this topic. Go ahead, Ray.
I know
I do want to say though that I'm trying to get ready to get on into work, and so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to devote my full attention to this today. But I just did want to throw that out. Maybe we can set aside a future get together for just that and see where it goes.
Yeah, and if
Emma has opinions on modernization. If you go to her LinkedIn stuff, I should say the term modernization, because she's very much like you in that it's a loaded word with negative connotations, and I have to laugh because I had a reach out from an AWS recruiter a couple of days ago, and it's like, of course, the first thing on my LinkedIn headline is I cannot relocate, and what's the first thing? We have a position in Seattle, which lovely city, but you obviously didn't read my LinkedIn. It's in my headline for a reason. But I mean, I think we need to come up with a better term. I mean, I like declunkification, but C-levels are not going to appreciate that term. They hear modernization and they're all drooling at the bit because that's what their magazines talk about. And we need a better word, and I don't think we've found it yet.
Here's what we keep on preaching modernization, but really it's simplification. If we want people to come to the platform, We have to simplify it. You have to write it in something that they understand. So we keep on talking about modernization, but it's really not modernization. It's more simplification.
We used to call it just updates, right? We'd install updates and we would embrace new technologies. We'd, bring us your HTML, bring us your, because we can do that. We got web interfaces.
But I think for me, this is why I picked declunkification, because we have the modern interfaces. It's not that the platform is not modern. It's the applications that people run on the platform. They haven't been touched for a really long time. They were written decades ago, and then people just added. You start with a box that looks pretty good, but then people keep adding warts to the side. Oh, I need it to also do this, and I need it also to do that. And suddenly you have decades old technical debt. And so what ends up happening is people associate the application with the platform. So you end up with this problem of people seeing the world in a very distorted way. And so it's really about removing, this is why I say declunkification, removing the clunkiness from those applications. If I don't do that, if I can't make the platform seem more connected, then I just suffer.
Yeah, I think this is all a messaging issue, right? So this is an issue of making a term that's not sexy, to be blunt, right? So you say modernization, that doesn't sound appealing or sexy to people. Honestly, even simplification, like Mike, you mentioned simplification. I agree that that's really what modernization often is, but it's not a term that captures people and says this is something that we actually want to do. I've seen a number of postings where they talk about how they are the bleeding edge of technology or something to that effect. But then, like, the job posting asks you for C++ or Java skills. And so you're like, is this really the bleeding edge, or is this just like you want to capture people's attention? And I think that's, this is all a branding issue, because the technology that we have access to like the coolest stuff ever, but it's how we're actually using it is really the problem, I think.
Yeah.
But this group here, I think we have the ability though to actually define what needs to be declunkified. It's like, we want to declunkify it, but it's okay. What is it you want to declunkify?
Well, and the other important thing to know, and I think Mike mentioned this, it's not just necessarily about providing simpler interfaces, but providing interfaces and ways of doing things that are more or less the same as they do it on other platforms. That's what I because I started, playing around with OpenXL, which is like Clang for COS, right? We offer that now. And it's just Clang, and it's actually pretty good at building stuff, importing stuff, and I played around with it, and I'm, by no means is it, are C compilers easy. It has like 1,000 command line options. It's standardized, right? And that's an important part of it too.
I'm liking how we're getting a lot of these neat tools that let you access stuff, and not just ZUAU, but all these other ZOpen ported tools and stuff that are really making the platform feel like other things. So this way you're not logging on to ZOS and going, what the heck is this weird green crap? I have no idea how to even do this. How do I tie this in with my other stuff? I think that's where the modernization message keeps coming from. ZOS is weird, it's different, it's too hard to use, let's just get rid of it. As opposed to now, it's like, oh, it's like everything else, but it's got these things that differentiate it, that make it better.
Well,
that's what Zoe is supposed to be about, right? It's just make it GUI friendly. Is that the way to put it?
So the way I look at this is Zoe drives the understanding of the platform off the platform. So in order to use Zoe effectively, you really have to understand ZOS. What we need to do in addition to that, and I do think we still need to do that. I'm not saying that's not valuable and important. It is. But in addition, we need to provide something that hides a lot of that complexity. In my world of the future, Z will have drivers and mechanics, and there will be a lot of people who can, develop to the platform and manage resources in the platform that will just be drivers. They won't need to really understand the guts, but they'll be able to use it, right? And then there'll be mechanics. And so ZOAU, a lot of those tools, they are the tools for drivers. Zoe, that's a mechanics tool, right?
But it's just for source, right? Isn't it just for source editing and compiles and that sort of thing?
You could do anything with Zoe, right? It's what we've seen.
It's not a user interface, though. I mean, in the sense of presenting something to a bank teller or something like that. No.
Yeah, you can use VS Code or some other editor that takes advantage of that interface. Yes, but basically what they've done is taken a bunch of Z commands or Z capabilities and made that accessible through a CLI, right?
So. I've heard the term ZOSMF lately, and I have to admit I'm not sure what that is. I haven't been in systems programming a long time. Is that sort of the same thing, trying to make a Zoe type interface for the Z systems programmer?
Does somebody else want to take this?
So ZOSMF, ZOS Management Facility, is a number of little technologies. Most importantly, in my opinion, it's a REST-based piece of capabilities. So that allows you to do things. There's plugins on top of the ZOSMF foundation, but what a lot of folks use it for are for things like dataset access, the ability to submit jobs, look at jobs, and on top of ZOSMF, it is a web interface similar to the Zoe web interface that allows you to open a browser, look at a data set, manipulate it through their little text editor, and you can submit the job, you can look at the job. I think that's like Frank had alluded to, is more of a mechanics interface per se. I think that for a developer interface, you're really kind of leveraging these things to tap into things like VS Code or whatever is it JetBeans or JetBrains or something? I'm sounding like an old person now, but anyway, it's just a series of, in my opinion, series of REST APIs that allow you to kind of do a lot of management functions now.
If only there was somebody in the audience who could talk about what modern development for the platform would look like.
Seems like it's a lot of Java. That seems to be the most popular language to work in. And I noticed Watson X, I'm very afraid of, because I think the way people are going to use it, they're going to convert it to Java and move everything off the frame. Everyone's entitled to do whatever they want. I think they're going to suffer in the end. They're going to have a system that doesn't do a very good job at all and is full of bugs and issues, and
It's written well, right? There are some things that our platform does better than any other platform, and not everything, certainly, but there are a number of things, and what I worry about is companies making that change and realizing that they've made a horrible mistake. Right? And I've seen this with a couple of companies who spend hundreds of millions of dollars to try and get off, only to realize that they can't.
Yeah,
and
that's often the case. Yeah, sad.
It is.
I don't see the code assistant for Z to effectively be that vector for transitioning off. I think you're going to take a COBOL application, you'll create Java code out of it, or I believe there's other languages slated to be on the palette for you to go from, to, from, whatever. But I still believe that those are meant to be running on Z still, right? I think that sure, you're going to have the person that says, okay, look, I got this fancy Java code, now I can copy paste it somewhere else and potentially it'll work. But I think
the marketing
Go ahead.
and sales people are going to get hold of that and say, well, there you go. That's the path to modernization. You know, ditch IBM, their legacy. That's another word.
Yeah,
That's loaded.
I prefer classic than legacy. I think classic sounds better.
You sound like you're selling soda, Frank.
Or how about legendary? Is that better? Legendary.
Now you're selling Pokemon.
Just to follow up on the question from before, the code that's generated when you let's say I convert from COBOL to Java still needs to be looked at by a developer. It's not going to be 100% clean code. There's bound to be hallucinations. And the key thing is the code it generates is going to generate code as if it was still going to run on Z, like somebody said earlier. If it has to do file I/O, it's going to create Java code that's going to be able to handle file I/O on ZOS. If it needs to talk to DB2, it'll create code appropriate to talk to DB2 on ZOS, KICS, IMS, and so forth. So just wanted to add that.
Well, but, and what we've been hearing, or what I've been hearing from businesses, is that they're not all that interested in shifting from COBOL to Java, right? What I do hear a lot from Watson Code Assistant is, can you just tell me what this thing is doing, right? The guy who wrote this code left the company back in 1994, and nobody knows exactly what it's doing. So how can I make changes when I don't know what it's doing, right? And so I think increasingly what I'm hearing people want from Watson Code Assistant is, tell me what this thing is doing. And whether that's COBOL, whether that's Rex or JCL or any language, right? It's more about understanding than generating code.
That's a good.
I'm involved in a pretty extensive pilot, and Frank, that kind of hits the nail on the head. It's understanding what the code is doing, and then the capability that was added recently, or is coming out soon, I think, on code explanation, is going to give somebody the documentation, like what is this thing really doing underneath the covers. That's the strongest point, in my opinion, for this offer.
And I think there's another thing to it too, though, right? Like, so imagine you're somebody who, I don't know, copies and pastes JCL, because that's an easy way to do that. I don't know if anyone's ever done that before, but if instead you could just have it say, I want JCL that does blank, like that might be a good way, especially for new people, like to do some basic work. I'm not saying that necessarily code generation is always like the best thing ever, but if you were already doing a copy and paste operation, it's certainly a valuable use case.
Well, and there's definitely certain things that I think we should be able to do much easier than we have to with JCL. Like I brought up the whole ZOS Open Tools port of XXD the other day because it was like I was so happy to see that it worked with data sets. It sounds so small, but I had to run this whole 30-line long idcams hex dump thing. It was terrible. And then I realized that I could just do a small command. So that's another important thing for simplification, right? Like an IAB copy, right? It should not be that hard to do the equivalent of a CP command to copy some members from a PDS to another one.
It lowers the barrier to entry of people that are new to the platform. I mean, I grew up in a DOS Windows Linux world, and even though I've been doing Z my whole career here, I still find JCL kind of annoying to work with because it's not how my brain thinks. I work on the command line because I've been doing it since college. There are folks that have been doing this their whole lives that they find ISPF very, very easy. And I just saw someone talking about in our internal Slack saying, "Well, I never want to get in a proper SSH, proper PuTTY session. That's not useful for me. It's ISPF and ISPF edit forever. If I have to, I'll use OMVS begrudgingly." So those kind of folks are on their way out. The folks coming in do not have any kind of this baggage, so to speak, with ISPF and all the traditional interfaces. So if we don't meet them where they are, they're going to leave. They're going to say, "This platform's stupid. Why would I even care?" It's like when I encountered when I was an intern, I used on an HP 3000, MPEIX. It was this bizarre, crazy mini computer OS that looked like nothing else on the planet. I didn't even have a proper file system. It ran work and stuff, but good luck finding one of those nowadays. That entire business is just gone. And we're going to be doing that if we don't keep modernizing and keep innovating here.
There's an important thing that you said there, Anthony, that I just really need to underline. And I know this is going to come out wrong, but the kids coming out today, not coming out of school, but really even earlier than that, they will refuse to agree with it's a skills problem. You don't understand the platform. They grew up in a world where the user interface bent over backwards to understand them rather than the other way around. So in a world where the platform is stupid if it doesn't know what I want is really the opposite of the world that we have always lived in. And so if we're going to be a competitive platform, we need to embrace that the operating system and the environment should be figuring out what the user wants, not the other way around. We have the power to do it. We just have to invest. And this isn't a particular company. I believe this is incumbent on all of us.
Hello, everyone. I would like to make a few comments here.
Sure.
I've been hearing modernization here. I think one of the things that annoys me about modernization, especially when I hear, because to me, Z is modern by default. The thing that we need to put in place is to define what are the boundaries where we're talking about modernization. So I've heard here saying, okay, how I would think about what would be, how much better would be a SSH terminal against a ISPF terminal. I mean, it really depends on who is using that interface. So I came out as in my early career as a developer. When I first saw those black screens, green screens, that really knocked me out as, oh, really? That's how I'm going to be working from now on? And when I start as a system programmer on Z. So, because I was coming from a different place where we had nice modern graphical user interface, where we had autocomplete, things like that when you're developing. So you're thinking differently than a system programmer or a sysadmin. So we need to put those boundaries and put that in context when we talk about modernization. Who are the persona? What are the experience that we are trying to bring to the people who are in the platform? Because the sysadmin, I mean, I mean, to develop a nice, I really think VS Code is best, but to do some of the sysadmin stuff, it might be better to do not in a VS Code screen and do in another way. I mean, now Steve mentioned about ZOSMF. I mean, my comparison to the ZOSMF for the guy who mentioned about what is the ZOSMF. I mean, just think about the HMC console. I mean, instead of touching the box, you're touching the ZOS itself. It's just a web console administration. It has a bunch of capabilities, but it's just like you have a WebSphere um, admin console that you're taking care of the WebSphere application server. Instead of that, you acting upon the ZOS itself. So you can maintain the ZOS. You can perform any many types of things on the ZOS itself from this web application tool. And as it mentioned, it has web interface. I mean, um, Zoe. I mean, Zoe. I think it's nice from a developer perspective. I'm not really fond of that on a sysadmin perspective. I mean, it's um, so we again. I think when we talk about modernization, we gotta think to what is the audience? What is the audience? What we're talking about modernization? Because I mean, say modernization because we want it to be modernized, it doesn't really stick the message, at least to me. I mean, it's saying that we're just putting a new interface. I mean, does it bring value to the user? I mean, if it's the user, from the user experience, it's a developer. Yes, having the capability to use VS Code and have them um, work as it would be in another platform. It is really useful. It is really productive, but that may not mean the same for all the tech people working on the platform. So
I think those very specifics you're talking about are what gets lost when we lump everything together under this one term of modernizations. Because when you get down to the specifics, that's when you find out where the what's actually happening, and it's not really modernization. It's just, like you say, adding. What does it add value? What's the point of what it is we're doing? That gets lost, and when you lump everything together, we need to keep that in mind. Exactly like you're saying. How is this better? And then talk about that. How it's more secure, it's faster, reliable, blows everyone else out of the water. That sort of thing. And then we'll have a good solid message. I think that we could. I was thinking earlier we could talk about Watson X as refreshing our code base rather than modernizing. We're refreshing because we're not necessarily doing away with what we have here in Cobalt, because that seems to be the message that I hear coming out of people who are, and even within IBM, promoting Watson X. They're saying modernize with Watson X and convert to Java. But I think refreshing, I like that term. It just came to me 20 minutes ago, so I thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah.
So,
If you don't mind, I'm going to steal it.
it can have a legacy code, whatever we want to call it. I mean, I always heard that over the years. Do we want to reinvent the wheel? I mean, we're going to break that code and just to revamp to another language to do the same thing.
right.
So we need to think about
Not modernizing.
what accomplish. We're talking about those new capabilities. I mean, okay, so we have the what is that tool? I forgot, the Connect Enterprise. So you can apply APIs, you can extend your application, so you can open that. So you have different ways to um, extend your application on a Z. You don't have to necessarily. I mean, and I do get, because we're having people that are retiring, and it's going to be even more complicated to support some legacy code because people don't understand, and tools will be able to help some new folks that are coming in order to be able to maintain those codes. And I see value, but in the way sometimes I see it, it seems to me that we want to, okay, let's redeploy a big application from COBOL to Java. I mean, it's going to be run with the same performance. I'm not sure. I doubt it. So all those known, what is it? A known. I forgot the term in English, but anyway, but non. There's no whatever. It's other requirements other than do whatever it's supposed to do, right? It's so
Yeah, I don't see
performance.
anybody talking about benchmarks and stuff like that, saying, well, how does this compare MIPS wise, or how does it compare performance wise? It's and
Exactly.
maybe they don't care. I don't know. But they've got to, because it's business. That's the thing that I got out of Cameron Shay's talk the other day. I don't know if you've heard that on Mainframe Society. He was interviewed for like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he said that hits home, I thought, was driving home this idea that IBM is about business. It's the middle name of the company. It's not the gaming company. It's not the entertainment company. It's the dang business company, and that's what we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to nail that too. To nail down that position. And own it. We should. I mean, that's what we do. We own that, and we should declare that to the world.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is that the people that IBM has traditionally connected with in the business are not business people, but rather the IT leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't articulate well the business value of the platform, you start to cause problems, because we can't use technical terms to explain to a business person why the platform is superior, right? And we have to be able to talk about the value of the platform without saying things like, well, it's available 24/7, because they'll say, well, so is the cloud, right? So it's a much more nuanced business conversation, and we just haven't, and actually not just IBM, I would say mainframers in general have not been really articulate enough to get the business to understand the value that the platform brings to the business. And part of it is because it doesn't ever cause any problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? It's just always, it's kind of like nobody worries about it because it just always works. It's always there. And so it's easy to forget.
Yeah, and it's also not the most attractive thing to walk into, right? Like I was trying to illustrate in the chat. I mean, it's hard to drive somebody to the platform when they're taught on something that isn't Z. They experience something, they understand, really kind of the standard is whoever gets to you first, right? And someone said earlier today, I came up on DOS, so I'm used to command prompts. Most of the late tenure mainframers came up on ISPF and those quote unquote green screen interfaces, so that's their standard, so that's what they prefer to use. Whereas if somebody coming out of another platform either uses SSH, uses a web interface, uses VS Code, that's what they're going to expect. Sure, you may be able to convert one or two people, but chances are you're going to need to make it work in their paradigm to make them feel effective and make them feel productive and useful. Otherwise, they'll just go to that other paradigm. And to me, we need to focus on making things seem attractive to people, because we can't just keep saying, hey, it's too hard to get people. No one wants to work on COBOL. No one wants to work on these things. We're not really solving any problems by just lamenting over the issues. This quote unquote modernization effort is really about kind of making everything more palatable, more so than it is saying, COBOL's ancient history. I don't think it's that. It's just, I think I've said this before, David, I think that we have to play with the marketing term. We have no choice at this point. It's kind of like when we adopted dinosaurs as kind of our mascot, right? Oh, those mainframes are dinosaurs. They're going to go extinct. And we're just like, yeah, sure. We're dinosaurs. That's cool. Dinosaurs are pretty badass. Jurassic Park was a pretty dope movie, right? why can we not do the same thing with modernization? I think we can. I get that most of us don't like it because it makes us feel ancient or whatever, but I mean, I like modern things. I like a modern car. I like a modern look to the way I dress, the way I act. Like, I don't want to be associated with, certain things. But it's just a term at the end of the day, right? And if we play along, let's adopt it and make it mainframey. Otherwise, we're going to look like those outsiders being pedantic about it. And I don't think that's. And apparently, I have a modern haircut. But yeah, if we're pedantic, we're just that person in the corner, like, well, we were cloud before cloud was cool. It's like, okay, that's great. You're just that person saying, I used to be able to throw a 30-yard pass back in high school, but it's like, you're 65 now. You no one cares. Like, move on. We don't want to be that person.
I think there was also, like, for me, my experience when I first joined and started doing stuff with the mainframe, I was an experienced hire or did a bunch of stuff with Linux and whatever else beforehand. So, like, I to Frank's point earlier, somebody said this in the chat, I don't remember, but young people are kind of like learning these skills in college, and then they're used to Unix. And there was definitely truth to that. And I think the problem that I experienced, which was one of the reasons why it was frustrating, was it wasn't just that I knew a different skill set. It was that a lot of the skills could have been transferable. But the culture mandated that because I didn't know the language that was there, or like I didn't know exactly the right terminology to use, or the fact that I wanted to use a slightly different tool. I was ostracized for that, right? So like, okay, so I knew, like, I didn't know what symbolics were at the time, but I knew what environment variables were. Like, why didn't people talk about those as if they were the same thing? Because I mean, they are effectively, right? And so a lot of these skills are transferable. We just choose not to let them be, right?
Well, and I just heard this from a number of clients. Why do we use different terms, right? Why can't we say boot instead of IPL? Why? Why do we do that? Well, because we were there first. Okay, but the rest of the world uses this term. Why not just use that term?
And now we have validated boot to validate the IPL.
Yeah.
So go figure.
If everybody else is subject to the same marketing messages, I'd say sure. Then we got a level playing field. It's like, hey, look at you. You need to modernize. But the IBM seems to be the only real target of that message, and that's why I put out the challenge. Show me anybody else that's the target of that kind of messaging, and I don't think you'll find it. I'm open to the idea that we can somehow exploit the term and to our advantage, but I'm at a loss to find any way to do it except maybe to ridicule it somehow. But I don't know.
The thing is that there are a lot of apps on ZOS that have been around for 50 years, right?
Mm-hmm. So they work well.
Yeah,
but and that's a difficult message. It's like saying, yeah, we should all have carburetors because they work.
Right.
No injector foul ups. Yeah. So yeah, I understand that. If somebody's got something better, then hey, yeah, we can use it. But I'm not sure that there really is. We've still got that. We still own that. Anyway, I don't want to. Anyway, I've talked a lot, but I want to take.
No, it's the point. Yeah.
Good topic. It's an important topic because I think it's an important topic because we all have a role to play in attacking it, right? There are some things that only companies can do, but this particular issue, this hey, the mainframe is old and stodgy, and you can't get anything done, and if you really want to be modern, you've got to get off. These are all things that we all can attack, and we can say, look, you can do this on here just like you can do it over there, or you can do. You don't have to do things my way. You can do things your way as long as they do the same thing. I don't care.
Here's a question: do we need to get rid of the term mainframe? Because personally, I'm very fond of it. I like it, but I'm afraid that may be in itself carrying a lot of baggage with it. Maybe we need to ditch that term.
Yeah, we've tried
I was gonna
we've
say,
tried
didn't
to
somebody
ditch it
try
a number
that?
of times, and it never works. What I always liked was when you'd see like I remember for a while Microsoft was using the term mainframe, which I thought was pretty cool. Um, uh, they would talk about, if you do this, it's just like the mainframe only on our platform, right? So I think there is a cachet associated with it. I think that um, the most people who aren't in our business don't really understand what the word means. They think that the mainframe is just a big computer, like all the computers, that they use. So I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, but I think it's hard to get away from the term.
Yeah.
But I think it's
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. I also think it's worth noting. I think interfaces are something that we need to focus a lot more on than terminology. In terms of terminology, I think the way we mitigate that issue is just when we have new people, just make sure we're using those synonyms and just saying, a symbol is just an environment variable because it is. I sort of had a revelation about step libs somewhat recently. It's like live path, and then everything made sense. If you just you know give people the synonyms, everything, all the dots will connect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that taking away the term mainframe wouldn't be as constructive as taking away our ability to be riled up about things, right? Because one of the craziest things is that I'm going to try to speak a little bit for the industry here, is we jump on people if they say something a little bit wrong, right? Where it's like, oh, the mainframes aren't modern. We're super easy to rile up. It's like, well, actually, we're the most modern platform in the world. It's like, we don't have to prove ourselves. You don't see the best people at whatever talking about how the people that matter talking about how they are the best at whatever. They just are, right? The de facto actually talented people, de facto actually skilled experts don't have to sit and talk about how they're the best skilled experts all the darn time. They simply just be, and people acknowledge that and let it be. So I think that people don't want to join that fight. People don't want to be like, that sounds like a great place for me to spend my life, being like one of those people who is meant to be out there attacking people for saying the wrong term and saying, hey, it's not actually this, it's actually this. Because everyone's seen it out on the web, that actually meme where someone says something slightly wrong and then someone jumps on them and says, actually, it's this. We don't want to be that, because that's not a very appetizing, one, person to spend time with, and two, industry to join, in my opinion. So sometimes it's best to let the water come off the duck's back and just move on with our lives and carry on, because we do good work, we do great things. Let's just let that be what it is.
I'm just worried that IBM's it's slipping. Its image, its respect for the brand, I think, is waning, and that's where I'm concerned there, that we're gonna be displaced if things continue the way they are. So
Yeah, and the other thing to know about the terminology thing is the thing that I've found is, even if you don't fully understand a thing, just having that kind of basic understanding to give you a place to start. Like, for example, with data sets, what the heck is a data set? And when you can kind of connect, a sequential data set is just like a file, and a PDF is like, just a directory with a bunch of files in it. That sort of makes sense. It's not a file system. It doesn't really work that way at all. But functionally speaking, that's what they are. That's how they're used. They're used the same way, right? And that's, in a lot of cases, that's good enough, right? You don't have to, get in all the little nitty gritty details and go, well, actually, data sets are record oriented and Unix files are byte oriented and yada yada yada. You know.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's one of the things that puts those people off. It's like we can get into such detail with JCL talking about the DCB options, and there's like 3 dozen of them. Whereas with Windows, it's just a file. We don't worry about that stuff, which makes it a lot easier.
All the other operating systems just have files, and by the way, we have files too. You know, we've been Unix for like 2 decades or something like that, right? That's that's the system, right? That's a core part of the system.
I agree with you, Leonard, but the only time you need to understand the differences is when you have to actually program either in Unix or on ZOS. File systems are different a little bit, and you need to understand those differences. But that's just like the difference between COBOL programming language versus like YAML or I'm sorry, Python. It's a programming difference. That's all. That's
right, but to start, right, you that gives you a place to enter, and then you start over time as you work more with the stuff. You start learning more of the details as you need to, but you need to kind of get that base understanding. Kind of connect it to something you already know, and that gives you a good place to start. Otherwise, you're kind of dead in the water. You have no clue what people are talking about.
Yeah, Linux uses slashes where ZOS uses dots. I mean, for as far as looking at files and the file system structure, that's the basics. When you go to open the files or look at the files, those are where you come into play. And sorry, I was late. My boss called me into a meeting.
So we are at our 5 minutes mark here, and I do have somewhere to be. So I'm going to have some other moderator close this down when the time comes. But I just want to leave the floor open. Do we have any other topics that people just have weighing on them that they want to add to the discussion? Now would be the time to either get in some final points or seed next event's topic. I think everybody has just interpreted that as me closing down the event. But
I was going to say,
go ahead, Ray.
I said in the chat, we were kind of wondering about, well, would we have anything to discuss this time? And thank you, David.
Yeah.
I mean, that came right out of the gate, and I suddenly realized that, holy crap, it's almost, for me, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Weren't we going to talk about AI or something like that? Like, didn't we have an agenda?
David was spreading misinformation.
What now?
David was spreading misinformation. That was last time's topic. I simply summarized that.
There is no agenda. There is no agenda. The idea is
that's the agenda. There's no agenda.
Yeah, people should be able to talk about this, and I feel, especially these kinds of topics where there's a lot of not just technical, but kind of there's business ramifications. I think there's a lot of cultural things that need to be attacked for us to move ahead, and this is supposed to be that kind of forum. It shouldn't be, hey, we're here to talk about AI, and you all just shut up unless that's what you want to talk about. So,
before we close, I would like everybody to remember that challenge. I'm still looking for anybody to show me even one ad that targets any other company than IBM with the word modernization, saying, get off of Apple, Oracle, whatever, and modernize, or in any sense. So on LinkedIn, I am ZOS Maven, ZOS-Maven. Send me a link to an ad. I'd love to see it. If not, that's how I'm going to approach this question now, I think, is to try to get across that, hey, we're the only ones that are getting this said against us, and maybe that'll wake them up. I don't know.
I'll say PJ threw some ads out there, but they're not in the computer industry. He found a couple, but that's kind of an interesting thing, though, that that term is being thrown around in several places. And it'd be interesting to see how it's picked up in those industries.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting thought.
All right. With that being said, I will issue another challenge, I suppose, is to post something wrong about mainframes on LinkedIn and walk away with it unscathed. That's my second challenge. If you can
Held-on
manage
review
that.
stinks.
Long term.
Yeah. Okay. So, Frank, I think this is a good stopping point. I think that we kind of covered everything. And David, seriously, I know that you were on your way to work. I don't know if you ever made it or not, but thank you for bringing the topic up. It was super engaging. I forgot to post a 15-minute reminder.
I couldn't tear myself away. I really love what you're doing. I appreciate it so much. It's such a
Absolutely.
good
Thank you.
live in person. Can't get better than this.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining and being a part of this. We really love having you here, and we love having the community engaged. Tell your friends, tell your family about this. They're going to love it, and they'll probably join too. The recording will be posted whenever I get around to captioning it and posting it onto YouTube. You'll see that on LinkedIn. You'll see it posted here on Discord. For all of you who aren't regular Discord visitors, please join some of our other channels here and stay engaged here as well. So we'd love to have you stick around. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next event. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.